Yes, so I'll try to speak super fast. And I'm going to talk about code review today. And I put a smiley here just to show that these tips are not like authority tips. They are supposed to be friendly, and they might not apply to your use case. But yeah, let's get started. So a quick introduction. I work as a platform engineer at Vipps. And the most relevant thing related to this talk is that I do a lot of code reviews, and we also get reviews on a daily basis. Yeah, so I think many professions have some type of review going on. But what's really special about programming is that you get like this huge amount of feedback all the time. And I find it interesting because we don't talk so much about how to give this feedback. It's just something everyone has started doing. So we've all been unleashed to like comment on each other's code. And yeah, I think it's important to just talk about how to do it. Yes. So in the DevOps lifecycle, we try to automate as much as possible. And code review is a manual step. And despite it being a manual step, it is really loved by most developers. Yeah, that's what I see. So there is a case study done at Google in 2018 that shows that 97% of developers think that code review is really useful and valuable. But as with any process, it can have its challenges. So I think one challenge of doing reviews is that it can become a bottleneck, and especially if you add more and more controls to it. So because it's such a useful process, it's easy to think that the more control you add in, the better. So it can be intuitive to just assume that if you have more reviewers, it will always be better than just having one reviewer. There are also some processes where the code goes to some external experts, such as security experts, to take a look at it. And what they saw in Google was that only 25% of pull requests were reviewed by more than one person. And this seemed to work quite well. So it's not necessarily like the more people you add to the process, the more useful it will be. There is a study done in Microsoft in 2013 that shows that those who give the most useful comments on pull requests are the same people as are working on the code on a day-to-day basis. So the tip number one is just to try to remember that the process, even though it's great and useful, can become a bottleneck, especially if you require more than one reviewer for your PRs and you also send it to external parties and require an approval from them also. So you could have good reasons for doing this, and it might be working for you, but I think it's a good idea to at least check in on the process and see if it's working as you intended it to work. And yeah, here you see a pull request that I made once upon a time that has more than 30 comments. And this is not a bad thing at all. It's good to get feedback from your peers. But I also think it's important to think about what type of feedback we leave to each other. So this leads me to tip number 2, which is just to give less experienced team members some room for creativity. So I'm not saying you should like purposely allow bugs into production. But interestingly, the Microsoft study, it showed that most comments that people give on pull requests were not about defects or edge cases or bugs, but they were actually about code style. And I think code style, it can be a subjective thing. So yeah, and speaking of bugs, if you do see that you have a lot of bugs where you require a pull request to catch them, then this could actually mean that you have problems earlier on in the process. So in my opinion, if you have some code that has very good test coverage and very good abstractions, it should be like a bit difficult to push defects into production, like it should break your pipeline. So of course, if you require pull requests to pick up bugs, then that's fine, but you can also think about, is something going wrong a bit earlier? And yeah, so at Google, when they first introduced pull requests, the purpose was not to pick up bugs, but it was actually to enable developers to write more maintainable code. So yeah, this leads me to just the final point that I think you should kind of avoid curiosity when it comes to pull requests. So if someone is asking questions about your code and so on, this could be just as good as like finding some defect. And if you do end up finding like a lot of big production-breaking bugs at the pull request review step, then this could also be a symptom of a bigger problem happening earlier in your DevOps lifecycle. that's all.